Hey guys, so welcome to another episode of Dwell Together. My name is Karen.
My name is Candice.
And today we're so excited to talk to you about a topic that we've discussed in private, like as friends, a lot, I
Way
think.
too much.
Yeah. And I think we all read, it came out of all of us reading the book Boundaries by Henry Cloud and Dr. Henry Cloud. And Townsend, I think it's John Townsend is the other author. And we had some very interesting discussions about boundaries and friendships. These authors are like Christian. Dr. Cloud is a Christian psychologist. So it was from that perspective. It's an excellent book. I think most of you would probably have heard about it. So we just thought that would be a good launching pad. But of course, we're going to share our own thoughts as well on that topic. So ready?
Yeah, I think it'll be good because I feel like when we were all kind of talking about it, we were all kind of dealing with our own wow, I think most of our things were related to maybe family at the time. Like, okay, how do we set up healthy boundaries with our families? Yeah. And I think we've grown. I think each of us have grown in our understanding of ourselves and our understanding of how to communicate and share our boundaries. So it should be good.
No, I love it. That's exactly.
Your psychology hat is fully on, and I am here for it.
We'll see. We'll see what happens. But so we're going to just read a definition that Dr. Cloud has of it because he really did an excellent job of this topic, and he has many books on the for family. I think wives and husbands, all that. All right, so. He defines it as invisible lines that protect an individual's well-being by clarifying who is responsible for what in their lives, including their body, thoughts, feelings, and actions. These boundaries are not walls, but rather like healthy fences or doors that establish what behaviors are acceptable and what responsibilities one is willing to take on. Fostering self-control and healthier relationships. So what do you think about that? Is there anything that struck you?
Yeah. You want me to help you here?
Yeah, thank you. I realized it's a little high.
Yeah, that's good. Clearly I made it for like until I just
As
fine.
you can see the
I like it. I like the concept of it being like invisible lines that especially related to I think you mentioned responsibility. Can you read that first line again?
Yeah, right. Invisible lines that protect an individual's well-being by clarifying who's responsible for what in their lives, including like their body, their thoughts, feelings, and actions. And it establishes what behaviors are acceptable and what responsibilities someone is willing to take on.
Yeah, I love that. I love the whole idea of boundaries being tied to responsibility because I think of, when I think about boundaries, I think about like, okay, I have a plot of land and on my plot of land, I have my house, I have my garden, I have my animals, I have my farm, whatever. And then you have your plot of land. We're separated by a fence. I don't get to just walk into your yard and take whatever I want from you unless you've given me that access, right? Unless you've said, come and take cabbages from my yard whenever you want, right? And I like the whole concept of boundaries not just being this brick wall that I'm setting up for self-protection, but it's less about self-protection and more about I'm trying to honor what is within my locus of responsibility. And I also want to honor you by engaging with you in a healthy way. So like, how do we do life and relationship in a way that we both honor what's within our locus of responsibility and we could also like engage with each other, if that makes sense. You know what I mean? So it's like sometimes if you need help in your garden, you could ask for that help. I could come over and help you with your garden and vice versa. But it's not like I am expecting that what is in my yard is your responsibility and what's in your yard is my responsibility. Yeah. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think that's a good extrapolation of the... No, I love it with the animals and the cabbages and stuff. It really brought it to life.
This is what I want for my future.
I was like, oh yeah, I'm so seeing that. This is
Listen,
so good.
I wanted to be like a farm girl since I was like young. Okay,
Yeah,
so
no, that
just humor
country
me.
vibe is totally me as well. I'm just like, oh, that sounds amazing.
Yes, give me the land.
Yeah.
Anyways.
Anywho, off track, but we're back on. Yeah, so exactly. And I think that if we want to look at it in a biblical sense as well, in terms of course, we always want to apply it to use the Bible, to see like how does this play out in the Bible? What does the Bible have to say, I should say, on this? And do we see boundaries in the Bible? Like,
I would say so. I mean, I can't remember. I should have looked up this verse beforehand, but I think there's a verse in scripture that talks about basically not like pushing. I think it's in Proverbs where it talks about like don't push your neighbor's boundary lines and stuff like that.
Right.
Whereas basically the whole premise was basically about like, you know, not trying to like steal someone else's land or like kind of encroach on someone else's property and stuff like that. And I think, I mean, in a very literal sense, it's important, but I also think in a relational sense, it's also important to think about, okay, what is my property and what is not my property, and how do I actually honor other people by not just invading their space. And I even think about just, I mean, actually, no, I'm not going to go there because that will get very controversial. So let's not go there, but you can continue.
That's okay. Yeah, so I agree with you. I'm sure there are lots of verses that probably speak to, maybe not necessarily use the word boundaries, but we see where God, I think Dr. Cloud in his book, Dr. Cloud and Dr. Thompson in their book, basically talked about that God has boundaries, right? We can't just like, especially if you look in the Old Testament, you can't just waltz up in the temple anywhere, anyhow you want, encroach on the, go into the Holy of Holies.
Yeah, like I think the law. So I think the law, for
Correct.
example, was a boundary setting exercise. It was like, it kind of was like, this is what you can do, this is what you can't do. But there was also boundaries in terms of like responsibilities. So like the Levites are responsible for this.
Correct.
They can't get land because the Lord is their inheritance. They could eat this bread, you can't eat that bread. They could go into this place, you don't get to go into this place. They're responsible for this, you're not responsible for this. You don't get to touch the ark like this, but you can touch the ark like this. This is how you carry my present. You know what I mean?
Yeah. So the individual had boundaries when it came to different aspects of their life. So when it came to, the temple life, I, as a if I'm not of the priestly order, then my boundary is you cannot go into the temple. Yeah. So everybody had different boundaries, right? The priests would be able to go. The high priest would be able to certain things. The other priests had boundaries too, right?
Yeah, and every layer of access had responsibilities attached to it.
Yeah, correct. Which is why it was so important that you establish that, because I love that you said that, because with boundaries, inherent in it is a responsibility. And that's what I think Dr. Cloud is saying here, where we are responsible for, God has given us responsibility for ourselves, right? He's going to hold us to account. So it's our responsibility to establish boundaries that allow us to glorify God in the best way possible. So if God, like you said, gives, I don't know if you had spoken about it, or if you talked about it before, but if God gives you a certain vision or purpose or whatever, then you have to protect that purpose, vision, etc., by putting boundaries and not allowing others to encroach on it, because that is going to deter you from satisfying what God has outlined. So
yes, and an example. Sorry, no, I just thought of a biblical example. I just thought of a biblical example, right? Yeah. So I can't remember which book of the Bible this is. So
somebody
forgive me, right? But there's a story in the Bible about this prophet that God sent to somewhere, right? He had sent the prophet to go deliver a message, and then he said, on your way back, do not turn aside to anyone. Okay? Yeah. Don't turn aside to anyone, come straight back. So this prophet is on his way back. And on his way back, he meets this other kind of retired prophet guy who is like, hey, come into my house now. And the prophet is like, well, no, I'm not supposed to be turning aside to anybody. And he was like, well, the Lord actually told me that you could come aside, right? And then so the prophet, okay, so it's the prophet and retired prophet. So the prophet is like, all right, well, I guess I'll go roll up, come through with you. He goes, has lunch or dinner, whatever it is. I'm highly paraphrasing, so forgive me. But the gist is
I know
accurate,
the story you're
right?
talking about, yeah.
He goes into this guy's home, has lunch or whatever. On his way out of this man's home, he gets eaten by a lion or attacked by some lion or something like that. And the guy who invited him into his home was the one who buried him. Right? And I just find that is the perfect example of what happens when you violate your own boundaries, especially boundaries that God has initiated in your life. Because I think that because God is outside of time, he understands, okay, when you should move, when you shouldn't move, when you should go here, when you shouldn't go here, when you should be with a person, when you should not be with a person. And I think anytime you violate those boundaries that he's trying to get you to enforce within your own life, it does not end well.
Yeah. No, I totally agree.
It doesn't.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
No, and that is, again, that's why I say boundaries are in the Bible. We probably haven't thought of it in that way. And that's why I was trying to pull out, where do we see the principle of boundaries in the Bible so that we can have actual examples. So I think that sets a nice little template for why it's important.
Yeah.
And yes, there's a biblical foundation to boundaries, and clearly the Bible supports us having boundaries. All right, so I think one of the things you highlighted already is that healthy boundaries, good boundaries, show that we respect each other, right? So I respect who you are as an individual,
Right.
And when you have good boundaries, it makes I am able to respect you as an individual in terms of I have a good understanding of what you require, who you are as an individual in terms of, whatever your purpose, your mission in life, what God has called you to do. I have an understanding of that because that's what boundaries do. It gives me information as a person who you would be communicating boundaries to. And then you as the individual who is setting boundaries, it helps you to clarify, okay, this is what I need to be doing, and therefore these are the fences, the boundaries that I need to put in place in order for me to be able to fulfill.
So I have a question. So when we're thinking about boundaries in the relational sense, what is inside my plot of land?
Right. So anything I think that that relates to, and I believe we'd have to go back to the Bible for this because that God has given us a free will, right? And he has given us resources, right? Okay. So our mind, free will, and resources, right? We are responsible for taking care of our mental, physical, spiritual well-being, right? Okay. We have the primary responsibility, right?
So it's like stewardship.
Correct.
We are stewards over our emotions, our needs, our will,
and
our
also
bodies,
our physical physical resources God has given to us. So anything that pertains to you as an individual, and those things, you have primary responsibility. And I say primary, I'll get to where God has appointed people like elders and stuff to be able to help us with spiritual. So they do have some responsibility. But primarily, each one of us is going to stand before the Lord. Right?
Yeah.
So
and we don't get to blame a pastor or anyone else for our spiritual condition because that's in our
Now, God will hold them to account if they did not help us in the way that they're supposed to. But at the end of the day, that's on them in that sense. But for us, whatever is under our control, we still retain primary responsibility. Because even if they don't do their job, we still have to find a way to do what God has told us, what we know is right,
Correct.
to not sin. So yeah, so that's what I would say is within our response. So with that in mind, could you give me like an example of some boundaries that relate, just like general ones that maybe based on your own experience?
Sure. Of like boundaries that have worked well, or just like boundaries in general?
Either one. So you choose, yeah.
Okay.
Maybe start with the ones that worked well, and then
Sure.
we'll talk about the others.
I think like, okay, so in my life, probably the most significant areas that I had to work a lot with boundaries is in my emotions, because I mean, like I'm an artist, so I'm a very sensitive person. And I think growing up, I didn't realize when I was young, but I realized when I got older what was happening was that I was absorbing emotions from other people. So I didn't know where my emotions ended and where someone else's began. So say, for example, someone that I love is being berated, for example. I would feel shame from what they're doing to my loved one.
Yeah.
And I carried a lot of rejection and a lot of different things by not realizing, I am receiving feelings that aren't mine.
Yeah. Wow.
So I had to spend a lot of time understanding, okay, these are my feelings, these are their feelings. These are my beliefs, these are their beliefs. These are my values, these are their values. These are my experiences, these are their experiences.
Right.
And for me, I had to do a lot of work in like very actively delineating those, because I struggled so much with just like people were overwhelming for me, because I'm in a room full of people and I'm just absorbing things like Rogue in the Matrix, right? I'm just absorbing stuff and I'm like over freaking whelmed.
Yeah.
So I had to do a lot of work there with like boundaries in terms of understanding where my boundary lines ended and someone else's began.
That makes sense.
I also had to do it a lot with purpose as well. So for example, I grew up in a very studious home, very love my family, love my parents.
Yes.
Very, like they trained us to just excel, right? I went to schools that were like top performing schools, so it's always like a grind. And I went to business school, which was a really good business school as well. But I remember after business school, I distinctly remember the day that God had called me very strongly and emphatically and told me, like, this whole music thing that you do, I want you to take it seriously, right? Now, I had that desire since I was young, right? But I was too chicken to pursue it, number one. Number two, I didn't have any framework for how I could do music do music professionally and be Christian and have a healthy family, and I just didn't understand how that would work. And then the third thing was that my parents always said, get a real job, music could be a side hustle, right? Now when the Lord said focus on music, then it was a challenge, because now I have to reframe what is in my garden based on, okay, God has given me a new mode. And now I can't just treat this as a side hustle. I'm actually going to have new boundaries for what I believe my purpose is versus what my parents believe my purpose is. And now I have to also learn how to communicate that to them and be like, this is not going to be a side hustle for very long, or I'm going to put more focus on this, or I'm going to take jobs that aren't business jobs so I could have more time to actually do what I feel like I'm called to do. So those are some examples in my life. What about you?
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of it, like boundaries I had to have is, yes, with family, for sure. But since you kind of gave a family example, I'll do more like work, because I tend to be very intense when it comes to work. And it is honestly boundaries in like that era of my life, it's still a huge struggle, as you would know. So, but if we want to look at things that worked well, I do remember like some time ago taking, like a few years ago, there was a job that I had that was, again, very intense. Was at a pretty high level and, again, very intense. So when I started, I was like completely, there was no stopping, right? Literally weekends, everything. My life was enmeshed in terms of, there was no delineation, like you were saying, between me at work, me at home, or at least very little, because physically I was at home, but your mind is on stuff, thinking about stuff. Weekends I'm there. It was not good, right? And especially for somebody in my profession, definitely not something that is recommended. So I think that was when I realized, like early on, that how important boundaries are, because obviously when you don't have those type of boundaries, you end up, they're important because it's like a safety. It's not just a nice to have. It's something that protects you from burnout in this case.
Yeah.
Right? So they're important to be able to find out what's a reasonable boundary. And the other thing I discovered is that you can't expect people to know or to even understand certain boundaries. Because one of the things, and we probably talk about this a little bit later on in more depth, with the struggles with boundaries, is that, especially in the workplace, a lot of people, because I had to counsel a lot of people were burnt out in their jobs. And what they didn't realize is that they are responsible for setting boundaries, even with their bosses.
Yeah.
So they would be like, but he's doing, like, how could he not understand that this is like too much or whatever? And I'm like,
but you also have to
take
responsibility.
Because a lot of times bosses, they just, it's not maybe something, it's not always that they don't care, but it's like, as long as you're getting things done, they don't realize sometimes that, wait a minute, this is a lot. It's as much as you are willing to accept.
Yeah.
So
That
it is
so
your
true.
responsibility to say, this is too much. Because their assumption in a workspace especially is not to be checking in with you every 2 minutes.
How is your heart?
Like,
how are you doing
feel
as a
about
human
this
being?
assignment?
No, they're just like, we gotta go.
Yeah.
You know?
And again, some of them really don't care, but a lot of them do. And it's just like, well, you seem to be handling it perfectly and doing such a great job. So you can't, a lot of times you can't blame them if you did not say anything. I mean, if you did say something and they're like, well, I just don't care, whatever. Then, but a lot of times that's what I saw. And it applied to me as well. I had to be like, yeah, this is not reasonable ask. All the, and have to be willing to take action in terms of whether it is go higher or to even leave, based on how firmly those boundaries need to be enforced. Because some boundaries, as we were talking about, it's a door. So all boundaries are not like
walls,
nothing ever, like I will never do. So if we set a boundary, like, after 4, I'm not going to be answering my phone for work. But like once in a blue moon, there's something happened, there's a fire at the company, right?
Yeah.
You're going to be like, okay, everybody kind of pitch in, do a little extra. It's perfectly fine to open the door and be like, you know what, for the next week or 2, until we kind of get stuff sorted, I don't mind working an extra hour or whatever. Yes, you can call me, right? So that's what I loved about, again, Dr. Cloud and his conceptualization of it, that, we do have the power to be able to say, you know what, here's an exception. The boundaries are not necessarily completely and totally, utterly fixed with no possibility of flexibility. It's like a door or fence where we can, at times, allow entrance, right? And we see that even in the Bible where typically, like, for example, David eating the holy bread, the showbread or whatever, and it was God was able, and again, it's his boundary. So the person who can make the exception is the boundary owner.
Right, yes.
Which is important. It wasn't, you understand what I mean? Like, he could decide, okay, I'm not going to, like, punish you for that encroachment because I'm going to allow it given the circumstances.
Right, gotcha.
Right? So we do have a lot of leeway in enforcing in when we have boundaries. So you don't have to feel like, okay, if I say this, or it's something that can never be changed for now and forever. And we were saying too that boundaries can shift, right?
Definitely. Because I mean, like, up to the point, for example, where I felt like God had called me to do music, I mean, I was on the business school track.
Yeah.
And I mean, even, you know, just thinking about shifting dynamics between growing up in your parents' home versus becoming an adult,
Yeah.
right? Like, the boundaries in terms of a personal boundary for myself would be, you know, I obey and respect my parents, right? But when you become an adult, now you, like, your primary parent kind of shifts a bit to the Lord,
Yes. Yeah.
and your secondary parents are your parents, right? And so now it's like, okay, well, the Lord is actually telling me to go this way. So how do I honor the Lord? How do I obey the Lord and honor my parents in my obedience to the Lord, right? In terms of how do I communicate what the Lord has told me? How do I, even thinking about like what I had to navigate this year, like, you know, sensing that, okay, the Lord was calling me to possibly take up a job that I'm still exploring. My parents being like, absolutely a horrible idea for all of these reasons. Like, why are you even doing this? And it was hard, but it's like, okay, I need to remain in respect with my parents. I need to, my approach to them has to remain respectful, but my obedience and allegiance has to remain with the Lord.
Yes.
And so that's like a shift, I would say.
Yeah.
As an example.
Yeah. And we're talking about like stages in life too. Like, you know, if you're single and then you get married, the boundaries are going to shift in terms of friendships, where it's not going to be as loose. You're going to have to be like, okay, you can't call after these hours. You can't just ups and be going here, there, and everywhere without checking in, you know, with your spouse or whatever. So, you know, there's a lot of flexibility changes. It sounds very like boundaries, like very hard and fast, but there's so many instances where, you know, you can reassess and decide what is best in a particular stage in life, and even for a particular time. Like, you can have boundaries for a particular time, not have them, then have them again, right?
For example, if you're like in an exam mode, right?
Yeah.
And you're doing school as an adult, and you're like, okay, guys, over the next 2 weeks, you're probably not going to see me or hear from me much because I'm going to be in like high study mode, just trying to crank out these exams, right? Then if you have good friends and family, they could respect the fact that, okay, I'm not going to be expecting you to show up at every family gathering over the next 2 weeks, because you've communicated, this is my responsibility for the next 2 weeks is to get these tests done well, because that's within my locus of responsibility right now. And after that, I will step back into the family dynamic, you know?
Yes.
So, yeah.
So sorry about that.
No problem.
Yeah. So the other thing that is important in that example that you just spoke about is communication, right? Because I think a lot of times people would do something like, instead of you saying to the person, hey, I have exams, so I'm not like, I can't go out as I usually do. I won't be able to answer all your calls. I might take a while or whatever, or try not to call me as much. A lot of times some people would do is say, I have exams, and expect that people would know, hey, don't call me. Right?
And then get very offended if someone is like bombarding them during exams.
Yeah, exactly. So that's a very key thing about boundaries, that they have to be communicated and communicated clearly, especially if it's something that is important for you to, like, it's an important boundary, right?
Yeah.
Because do not expect people to just know. That's basic tenet of good communication. So if it is that, now after that, if people encroach on your boundaries, then you could get upset in terms of obviously disagree in love and talk to them in a way that is loving and kind. But definitely you can confront them with that. Like, listen, that is really not good. I didn't appreciate that. But to just get angry when you did not clearly state certain things.
Yeah, and I mean, I would say even when you've communicated, take a while before you get angry.
Right.
If
Yeah.
they,
Totally agree.
because I don't think that it should be you communicated your boundary once,
Yeah.
and this means you now have the right to be
Yes.
super offended if they, because I think that people need, when you establish a boundary, it takes a while for someone to be trained in your boundary.
Excellent point.
Right? And
Exactly.
so, for example, it can't just be like you tell your parent, okay, this is my new mode. And then your parent doesn't, do that. And then all of
Yeah.
a sudden you're like, oh, you're just always just violating my boundaries. Like I set up you know what I mean? Like,
Especially when
don't-
they've been accustomed and you've allowed it
Exactly,
in the past, and now it's
exactly.
like, okay, great, but you've kind of allowed this behavior.
Yeah, it's like you have to
For quite a
recognize
while.
and be mature enough to know this person has to is learning a new boundary,
Yes.
right? And all of us, when we're learning something new, we need reinforcement, right? So say you, like, okay, classic example is you and your family are like this, right? Y'all are at each other's house Sunday night
Yes.
dinner and board games or something, for
Yes.
example. You get married now, and your husband wants to have dinner with his family, or he just wants to have dinner with you at home, right? And your parents are calling you. It's like, hey, so we're seeing you for dinner this evening. And it's like, well, no, because now that I'm married, husband and I are trying to figure out a new, what our traditions are going to be for our family, right?
Yeah.
You could imagine your family's going to be offended, mildly annoyed at the husband, like, oh my gosh, she's trying to steal her away from us. Like if he was family oriented, he would know
would
that
want
this,
to, like,
he
why
would
does
want
he not
to,
want to have dinner with us? What's wrong with us?
Exactly. So it's like they're going to be dealing with their own emotions about your
Yeah.
boundaries.
Yeah.
You're also learning how to respect your own boundaries, because that's a whole other kettle of fish.
Yep.
How to not violate your own boundaries. And so it takes a while.
Yes.
So I would say
100%.
in all circumstances, take a while before you get offended.
Yeah. And I think you should avoid getting offended at all costs, actually. But I mean, in terms of, at least if it is that you feel like you need to respond, it may, as gentle as possible, like you're saying in the beginning, just so that until people sort of can acclimate to the new boundaries, again, especially if it's something that has been going on, sometimes for years and decades, it's going to be second nature to the other person. So, yeah, be mindful and caring. And even though boundaries are important, we just want to, that's a good example of we could be considerate and kind. It doesn't mean that because we have to do it, we do so in like a harsh manner, you know? So great. So communication, very important. Let's talk about, we'll focus a little bit about the struggles
Yeah, sure.
with boundaries, and we could start with the communication, I think, and then you could let me know some of your thoughts. As in, people get very apprehensive about communicating, having the conversation sometimes. For some people, it's easy, like all my extroverts raise their hands. They're like, yeah, that's not going to be a problem for me.
But I don't think it's an extrovert thing
Yeah,
as much
it could
as it
be.
is like a people pleaser thing. Like
Yes,
I think
that's a good one.
if
Yes.
you're a people pleaser, it will be very,
Very
hard
difficult,
to communicate.
yeah.
Because I think I know a lot of extroverts who are people pleasers,
That
and
is
they
true.
don't know how to.
Yeah.
They might communicate something,
Yeah.
but it's like you could tell when.
Yeah.
a
I think I meant to
extrovert-
say like assertive.
Yes.
So that's the word I wanted to use. I said
Yeah.
extroverted, but what I really mean is assertive. So
because it's very different.
it's very different, correct. So so the more assertive people will not have a problem with that, but yes, you're right. People pleasers, oh yes. This is going to be very, very hard. But so we already established it needs to be done. So it's just like if you have a personality that is gets very anxious about these conversations, you could ask for help in terms of, how do I have this conversation, and, prepare yourself for it, right? But so communication is important. You have to communicate boundaries. you may struggle with how to, because sometimes it's not even assertive people. If the person that they're interacting it with is someone who they know or they have a history,
It's inflammatory.
is
or
inflammatory, or is a person who is disrespectful generally.
Yeah.
Because a lot of times these conversations may be with people who, in general, are like disrespectful and you have issues with.
Yes.
Right? So in those instances, even people who are good communicators and may kind of be apprehensive about approaching somebody like that. So do you have any thoughts on like what might be helpful in those situations?
Sorry, I'm just thinking.
Yeah.
Because I mean, I think it depends on how. Because, okay, so if someone is highly disrespectful / can damage you in some
I mean
way,
like physically?
whether
or just
physically,
verbally?
mentally, emotionally, on your job, like powerful.
Retaliation
Like, yeah.
type thing, yeah.
Then I think that you have to be wise in terms of getting to your boundary in a way that is the lowest risk,
Right.
I would say. So, like, for example, like, it would be easier for me, like, if I know you could handle me saying, I cannot come, I can't hang out today,
Right.
like, or no, something as simple as like if I say I actually can't talk after 4 p.m. today because I have this thing, right? And if I know that there's someone else in my life, if I announce it, it's gonna be more of an issue than if I don't pick up and I call them back 2 hours later.
Right.
Then the way I respect my boundary might be, in their case, to call back 2 hours later when I can speak, versus with you where I communicate.
Okay, I understand.
So it's more about like using wisdom and learning how someone responds to me. Because in both instances, I'm enforcing the boundary.
Right.
The first one, I enforced it by setting an expectation
Implicitly,
through
yeah.
communication.
Explicitly, yeah.
The second one, I'm enforcing it by a response that they could learn, okay, I am trying to get her at 4 p.m. every time, and she calls back at 6.
Right.
So I'm learning that she's available at 6.
Okay.
You understand what I'm saying?
Yeah. I think I think the thinking behind it, like you said, is really this is reserved for because the ideal would be to tell the person so they understand clearly.
Yeah.
But in those situations where you don't have, based on prior experience, you don't have a good expectation that this person is able to comprehend. Either maybe you tried to do it in the past,
Correct,
and they
yeah.
just were like,
I would say good communication is always the default.
Correct.
And if it is not working, then you
Yes.
would need to find other ways.
of yes, protecting yourself if the person is not willing to engage in a way that's reasonable.
Correct.
I think that's a good that's a good one, right?
What I would say though is that disrespect is very difficult to deal with for anyone, right? Like disrespect, being called names, like, and people could be real abusive out here, like
Yeah,
verbally,
yeah.
emotionally, and stuff.
Exactly.
Especially when it comes to boundaries. Like, I think Dr. Henry Cloud actually talks a lot about the swine test, right? Because like in scripture it says that don't throw your dogs before
Pearls to
pigs,
swine.
don't throw your pearls before swine, and it talks about basically like like if you discipline a fool, like he will curse you. If you discipline a wise person, they will respect you and stuff like that. So I actually think that boundary setting is a great way to understand where people are at.
Yeah.
Because
How
their
they receive it.
reaction, their response kind of gives you an idea of, okay, this is a person who understands and could respect boundaries, or this is a person who does not respond well to that at all. So I think boundaries are a great swine test. But, oh my gosh, I lost my trend of thought now. What were we talking about
We're talking about like basically how to communicate with
Oh,
people.
I know I was going.
Yeah,
Right.
who don't.
But disrespect and like abusive language, tone, all those things are very
Yeah.
difficult for any human to
Yeah, yeah.
experience. So I think that it's important for our boundaries to be like we have to value it enough to be willing to experience the costs of having it, I would say, right? And you need to understand which of your boundaries you're more willing to experience a cost for, right?
Yes.
So, for example, you know, I may be more willing to experience the cost of firmly establishing a boundary with my family when it comes to my purpose, right? Versus come over on Saturday night. Like I don't need to have a debate with my parents about why I can't come over on Saturday. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
for the
So
most
use wisdom in terms of there is a hierarchy a lot
yeah,
of times.
so it's like
with
I mean,
boundaries.
like
Yeah.
I could be all like you don't respect my boundaries, or I could just be like, you know what, I can come.
Yes.
I can find a way to come because
Yeah.
I actually care about my family, and this is not that big of a deal. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Versus, okay, if you're trying to like shift my whole understanding of my purpose and why I'm made,
Right.
then I have like I understand that part of me being responsible for living out the purpose that I was made is dealing with even if someone is disrespectful in the way that they're pushing back, right? So, I mean, I don't think, so I remember in my own life, my parents weren't disrespectful to me at all during the time of like me discerning for this job this year, for example. But they really, really didn't understand it. And there were times, you know, things got heated and stuff like that, obviously. But I understood, okay, in their brains, their child is giving up stability for a hope, for a maybe, right? Their child is possibly going to move to a place that is less stable than where we are now. This is also my child that I want to stay as close to me as
Yes.
possible.
Yeah.
And I remember telling my parents, because they were talking to me, and I remember telling them, like, I understand, like, I don't need you to agree with me because I actually understand your viewpoint. And your
where you're
role
coming
in my
from,
life is to protect and tell me all the things that would keep me safe. So I'm like, I perfectly understand where you're coming from, right? And I could honor and respect that, right? I don't need you to all of a sudden decide that you agree with my decision. However, even with that, I understand that it's more important to me to honor God and to follow his
Right.
trail of breadcrumbs than to appease your fears right now. So even though I could understand them and honor it right now, like I also needed to understand that this could be something, like I'm trying to honor God here and trying to see, okay, what he might be doing. And I remember telling them, especially, even if this job doesn't work out, what I want you to understand is like, because it was a completely different field, right?
Yeah.
And one of the main things they're talking about was like my degree and using that. And I remember telling them, I was like, ever since I was young, I wanted to do full-time ministry. And I remember telling them, even if this job doesn't work out, I need you all to understand that full-time ministry is where my heart of hearts is.
Yeah.
And even if this job isn't it, I need you all to start being primed for the fact that that may be where I end up. So it was, for me, I was just getting them like, start thinking about a shift, whether this ends up coming to pass or not. I need you to start preparing yourself for a shift in my life. And they actually they actually thought about that. They actually respected that. And over time, like my parents are so amazing and so supportive and stuff. but I understood the arc that they had to go through, right?
Yeah.
And I could have we could have completely fallen out about that if I had no maturity.
Yeah.
I could have been like, yeah, my parents don't understand. They just da-da-da-da. You know what I mean?
Yeah, or if you had avoided the conversation altogether, and then it's like, yeah, so I got this, I'm going, because you're like, I don't want to have to deal with.
Yeah, and then they could have been like,
what?
Okay, I don't want to talk.
Right?
You know what I mean?
Correct.
It could have caused a big rift.
Yeah, and so in protecting yourself, it helps you. It actually helps develop and protect relationships because it doesn't get to extremes where it's like, okay, you in your mind already knew what you had to protect, what needed to be put boundaries needed to apply to. So you already knew music is one of those things. So that's something that you could have incrementally been like protecting. So it should not have come as a total shock. They may still be like, wow, this is a different thing. But what we want to do is get people who are in our lives accustomed to understanding like what is important to us, what are we trying to protect, so that they have at least an understanding of, okay, when I do have to put certain boundaries, and probably even more increasingly stringent ones, right? It's coming from me protecting this particular thing that either God has given me or wherever it's coming from. But they have that sort of understanding. So yes, it would still take some time to adjust, but at least they would have that mindset and it would have been conversations along the way about the importance of this. You know what I mean?
And I think if you could communicate through the lens of values and responsibilities, it makes it way easier, because my parents value my safety and they value my physical safety, but they also value my long-term security, right? So if I understand that their values are safety and security for my children, my values are open to adventure and exploration with the Lord and obedience to the Lord, especially as a young person, right, who isn't married yet and stuff, then the conversation becomes less of fireburn what you have to say, right? And a lot more about, hey, like, you're valuing safety and my long-term security. I am valuing obedience, submission to Christ, going on adventures with him in my life. So how do we talk about that?
That's a very good, I think, example of a lot of different applications of boundaries, but again, shows the importance of having them, especially in close relationships, you know? Sometimes it's even more important because the tendency to encroach tends to be higher, right?
When you love someone.
You allow a lot of stuff that probably you think, nobody else gets to do that, right? So it really is a tricky thing. But again, going back to the point we're making in terms of how to sort of have the conversation with somebody who might be actually disrespectful. And sometimes the conversations are just difficult in that maybe it's something that, like with your parents, it's not easy. And most conversations like that probably won't be like, probably are going to be a little difficult. But then you have extreme where the person is actually adversarial, disrespectful. And you were saying, just to summarize, use wisdom, right? Choose the lowest risky option.
Yeah.
I would add to that, for example, and I think you gave an example of that, you may not want to meet with them in person, right?
Right.
Because it's always good, I would say, ideal would be meet in person, especially if it's a boundary that is like with your parents, like something that's very important. They are important to you, and this is something important in general. But if it is somebody who's like really disrespectful, you might just need to be like, send them a message, because if I try to engage with this person face to face or even on the phone, that I'm going to get a lot of pushback, and it might be safest to just send an email, send a message, which you probably would try to avoid if it is that it was somebody who you could have a good conversation with, and there could be a nice back and forth. Sometimes you just need to enforce the boundary and be like, no need for back and forth, because it's not going to end well.
And I think for some people, explicitly stating a boundary makes them feel safe. And for other people, explicitly stating a boundary makes them feel unsafe, right? So for me, I love when people are like, hey, like say I'm with a partner and they're like, hey, like, just gonna take a nap for 2 hours, or or
So
even like, so if I'm not responding, it's not because I hate you, you know what I mean?
Like, where have you gone?
Yeah, it's just like, but it's just, it just helps you like that. But for some people, it's like, you might be like, hey, like, I won't be available for the next 2 hours. Like, that might draw so much attention to it that it creates more of a problem than if you set within yourself the boundary of like, I'm turning off my phone for the next 2 hours, and then you come back at the end and be like, hey, sorry about that delay, thanks for the patience, was just working on something. Like, if you understand that they respond better to your boundary when you re-engage after having set it with yourself versus establishing it up front. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, I'm of two minds about that.
Tell me.
I think sometimes, again, the whole wisdom thing. So, because I feel like, depending on the type of relationship, not being explicit is more likely, not saying it will, to lead to a little bit of confusion. And uncertainty, even if, so what might need to happen is that they might need to
learn. Yeah, that's true. I would default to that. That's true.
Build
You're right.
Tolerance to be able, because if you're saying it in a way that is kind, right, then they should, I think, be able typically to receive it.
Yeah, because I've definitely had experiences where my being clear is like, whoa.
Yeah. And then that could be a back and forth. Like, I appreciate you telling me, but like that, how you did it was kind of jarring to me. That could be fine, where it's like, I had a problem with it because I felt like you don't care, or that and that's important to like just not doing it. Like, if they're getting upset about a boundary, there's a reason why they're getting upset, because they feel insecure, something, they interpreting it wrongly.
Or if they're used to violating their own boundaries.
Yes.
I think people who are used to violating their boundaries for you, it's easier for them to be offended when you are unwilling to violate your boundaries for them.
Right. And I know what you mean, but explain to the audience what you mean by violating your own boundaries.
Violating your own boundaries is like, okay, I know this is within my responsibility. I know a simple example could be like, I have something to work on for a client tonight. I've set a boundary within myself, like, I've delayed too long tonight, I need to go do this.
Yes.
On your way home, family member calls, pling, 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 hey, you want to hang out? Or hey, you want to do this or that? And you're like, hey, well, I actually can't because I have this client thing that I have to finish off tonight. You want to do another day or something like that? If they are used to canceling their plans for you, especially if they don't even communicate that they have canceled plans, right? To accommodate you, then if you have a moment where you're not willing to cancel your plans to accommodate them impromptu, it could feel like, well, I canceled my stuff for you, so why can't you cancel your stuff for me? When it could have been like, if they were canceling, they could tell you like, hey, well, I actually have something on this day. And it could have been a negotiation of like, oh, okay, well, then if you have that thing, then I'm not going to expect you to show up. Or like, okay, well, we could maybe try it for a different day. You know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly. So there's that like feeling of unevenness in terms of if, and this is why, again, on both sides, boundaries are so important. That we keep our own boundaries, that we have them, that we keep them, so that it doesn't feel like, well, I have no boundaries and I just give everything up for you, which is a kind of like, you don't want a codependent sort of relationship developing where there's like enmeshment, like I just lay everything down for you, so I expect the kind of that in return, which is not healthy. So so thanks for explaining that. Right. So I feel like we covered a lot.
I just wanted to talk about one thing, which was the boundaries with yourself. So one of the things I was thinking about is a big part of the boundaries with yourself is like your values and how you choose to behave or not behave,
Right.
what you choose to do and not do,
Okay.
etc. And I think that every time you violate your own boundaries, you are training yourself not to trust yourself.
Right.
So, for example, I will wake up like what I want. The boundary I set for myself is to wake up on mornings at 5 a.m. to do my devos before work. For
Right.
example, every time I choose not to wake up at 5 a.m. and do my devos, I'm training myself that I can't be trusted to
Yeah.
respect that boundary.
Boundary.
Right?
Yeah.
Another example is, a boundary I've set for myself is that I want to save myself for marriage, or I want to protect, I want to honor my body before I get married and honor the body of my partner, for example. But then when you're with your partner, you're crossing your boundaries, you're doing a bunch of stuff. Every time you do that, you're training yourself that I cannot be trusted within my own body or with my partner, right?
Yeah.
I cannot be trusted to advocate for my own boundaries when I'm with my partner. And so all of those things really break down self-trust, and it creates a lot of anxiety in your life because you don't feel safe with yourself.
Yeah.
Right? Because you're training yourself that you are an unsafe, you as in yourself, you're an unsafe person because you violate your own boundaries.
Yeah.
You set boundaries for yourself and you don't even meet
you
them.
don't, yeah.
And I think that when you do that, it's way easier for us to want to externalize our boundaries to other people. And it becomes like, I don't trust myself to respect my own boundaries, so I really need you to advocate for my boundaries.
Yeah.
So in relationships, it's like, I really need you to be sexually pure because I don't trust myself.
Right.
And which happens a lot,
Yeah,
or
yeah.
like, I don't know how to say no to my family. So I really need you, family, to say no for me.
Yes.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So like things like that is just what I was thinking about when it comes to our personal like our own boundaries with ourselves and stuff.
Internally, yeah. Which is like a good point. You don't really think of, like you said, crossing your own lines, which is, that's where it starts really. Because if you can't maintain, how do you expect other people? Because they're going to pick up on the fact that you don't even, like you said you're not going to do this and you did. But
Yeah.
you want us to respect your boundaries. Like, oh, really? And then one other thing, I think this is important, and we could probably end there,
Yeah.
is one of the things we shouldn't be doing is to use boundaries in an abusive way, manipulative way. We were talking about that. Don't want to leave that one out, where we're not truly like you were doing with your music, trying to protect something that God has ordained, that you're responsible for, doing your best to do that, but actually using certain boundaries to manipulate somebody else, like a
Or
partner,
to just
somebody,
push them out.
or to push them out, or to do anything that is not good and kind, right? So an example might be like, I don't want you to like even calling or texting or something like that, just trying to do it in such a way that it's to
Like
hurt
punishes
the other person
them,
and
yeah.
to punish to punish the other person, right?
What would a everyday example of that be then?
I think probably like, especially in relationships, like maybe romantic relationships, that could probably
Right.
come up a lot, where it's like maybe you'll have a disagreement and it's like, I'm not talking to you. I'm going to put up a boundary. You don't get to call me or talk to me, or we're not going to have any dinners or whatever you're accustomed to, whatever activity, or if there's something that you are accustomed doing in terms of conversation, maybe you're like, I'm just going to be busy for the next 5 weeks.
Because I'm mad.
Yeah. Or you say something like, I have use work or something else, or use something, because you could always make up something like, well, I'll be busy for the next 5 weeks, so I really don't think I can go anywhere. When you probably have, it's not an actual, if it was an actual work thing that's not related to maybe some disagreement that you had, then fine. But we're saying you're using that boundary excuse in a way that is punishing. It's not a legitimate, I really have work to do and I really can't, I don't have the time for the next 5 weeks or whatever. It's that you have kind of made up this boundary in response to, right?
Yeah.
Something that the person did, and that's a habit. So, you understand what I mean?
And I have been guilty of that. I'm not gonna lie. Like now that I'm thinking about
We
it,
all have, I'm sure.
yeah, I think I've
some way.
definitely done that. I remember I was going to do that yesterday. Like actually, like I had a moment where I was like, but I did catch myself because I
Right.
started to realize,
Yeah.
okay, if you say this right now, if you do this right now, you're just gonna be doing it to punish the person.
Yeah.
So
Intent. Is
Don't-
important, yeah.
yeah. So and I realized that what I had said was enough for me to now wait and see how they respond, rather than adding to what I said a punishment. Because and in the moment I realized that the punishment that I could have put was because I was scared
Right.
of them not responding to the regular boundary
Yeah.
that I had kind of, you know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah.
It's like I was scared that what I had said was not enough for them to adjust.
Right.
And so I was going to add on the punishment boundary as a way to preemptively adjust
Ensure that-
myself. But you know what I mean? So
Yeah.
it's a less vulnerable approach.
Right. But it was a use of boundaries which are supposed to be for good
Yeah.
in a way that is not good, like you said, to punish.
Yeah.
Which again, I think we have all to some degree done it at some point. So we're just drawing it to your attention, not that so that you understand like this is not something we should do, because I feel like a lot of people have done this, right? That, been like use the guise of a boundary in order to punish somebody.
Example, stonewalling. I think stonewalling is the perfect example of a punishing boundary.
Right.
Because you're saying, and stonewalling is like, when you shut down in conversation and just refuse to speak. Like, I think that is a punishing boundary, because it's just like, I'm not going to speak to you because of whatever reason. So I'm just going to,
Right.
like, I'm just going to.
So my boundary is that I'm not going to engage you at all. That's your punishment. I'm not gonna try and work it out. I'm just going to be like, yeah, we done. Right? And I mean, of course, if the person is actually abusive, so we always know that's the context. But generally speaking, like you said.
But in the realm of healthy relationships,
Correct.
an actual boundary, a healthy boundary could look like, hey babe, like or even in a friendship, like, hey, like I'm getting overwhelmed right now. Can we pause this conversation and pick it back up later today, maybe after work or at 6 p.m. or whatever, and we could kind of chat about it when we're both a bit more relaxed, because I'm overwhelmed, you're heated. That is a boundary that still encourages relationship
Exactly.
versus the stonewalling of I'm overwhelmed, so I'm going to ignore your need for communication right now
And wall
and
off
just
myself.
focus on walling, like putting up that wall for me so I could, because it's a forcible, I'm going to make you respect the fact that I don't want to talk right now. Rather than sharing the
Yeah.
need, asking for that time and waiting for a response.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
I totally agree. So just wanted to make sure we got that one in, because that is also something that could happen when people's like, oh great, I'm going to be enforcing boundaries, and it's like, examine your heart is what we would say when you're looking to enforce these boundaries, and be mindful too of the impact it's going to have on the person. I mean, you have to do what you need to do, but also, we want to do everything in love, and way that fosters relationship and good community and friendship. So we'll leave it there, I think. And
Do you want to
just gonna
pray for us?
Yeah, we're going to close in prayer. So Lord, we just thank you once again for being able just to film this podcast. It's been a while. So we're so glad that you were able to help us to get the time and opportunity to do this. We thank you for today's episode. We ask, Lord, that whatever was shared, that the things that you think are important and that you want to impart to each and every person who's listening, might be different things. Lord, we ask that it will go forth with the power of the Holy Spirit, that it would change lives, and that we would use whatever has been spoken about to glorify you, to draw closer to you and to each other. So help us, Lord, as we walk along this life. We are so grateful for your presence and your guidance. Continue to guide us and guide our audience. And we ask all these things in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. All right, bye guys. See you all next week.